The Interstellar Combat Academy existed for one purpose, to ensure that the countless civilizations of the galaxy could survive the dangers waiting beyond their homeworlds. Built in orbit around a neutral star system, the Academy welcomed cadets from hundreds of species every cycle. Some came from peaceful worlds covered in oceans. Others evolved beneath crushing gravity or within frozen wastelands. Every species arrived carrying its own military traditions, survival doctrines, and combat philosophies. The Academy encouraged the exchange of knowledge. Training grounds remained open. Exercises were shared. Observers were welcome. Future officers learned from one another because cooperation had become the foundation of galactic security. Every species followed that principle. Every species except humanity. The human sector remained sealed. Its training facilities occupied an entire section of the Academy, protected behind reinforced blast doors and restricted access protocols. Observation requests were denied. Training records were classified. Even instructors from allied civilizations rarely entered the area. Whenever questions arose, administrators offered the same vague response. Human training methods were incompatible with non-human participation. Nobody believed that explanation. As cycles passed, rumors multiplied. Some cadets claimed humans were developing illegal weapons. Others believed they were enhancing soldiers through genetic modification. A few insisted that autonomous war machines conducted the training while humans merely supervised. The more secretive humanity appeared, the more imaginative the theories became. The mystery transformed into one of the Academy's most discussed subjects. Students debated it in cafeterias, lecture halls, and simulation chambers. Entire betting pools formed around what might be hidden behind the human sector's sealed doors. Nobody possessed evidence, but everyone had an opinion. The humans never helped clarify matters. They arrived for classes, completed assignments, dominated tactical simulations, and then disappeared back into their restricted facilities. That only made the mystery worse. Among the current human delegation, one individual attracted particular attention. Lieutenant Maya Torres. Unlike many cadets, Maya never sought attention. She spoke only when necessary. She never boasted about human achievements. She never reacted to insults or challenges. During strategic exercises, she consistently ranked near the top of every class, yet treated victories as routine administrative tasks rather than accomplishments. Her calm demeanor unsettled people. Most cadets displayed some visible emotion under pressure. Maya displayed none. One afternoon, a senior instructor conducted a seminar examining military doctrines from across known space. Representatives from dozens of species filled the massive auditorium. Discussions ranged from fleet coordination to planetary defense strategies. Eventually the conversation drifted toward training methods. A reptilian cadet joked about humanity's obsession with secrecy. Laughter spread through the room. Another student suggested humans were hiding embarrassing failures rather than revolutionary techniques. The instructor allowed the discussion to continue for several minutes before turning toward Maya. The auditorium gradually fell silent. Everyone knew the question that was coming. Lieutenant Torres, the instructor said, perhaps you can settle a long-standing debate. Why do humans insist on training separately from every other species? Hundreds of eyes focused on her. Some expected an official explanation. Others anticipated another evasive answer. Maya looked around the auditorium, studying the faces staring back at her. Her expression remained completely neutral. Then she answered. Because no one survives training with us. For a moment there was silence. Then the room erupted with laughter. Cadets leaned forward in their seats. Several nearly fell over. Even some instructors smiled. The response sounded ridiculous. The galaxy contained species capable of lifting armored vehicles. Others could endure radiation levels that would kill most organisms. Several civilizations evolved on worlds far more hostile than standard academy environments. The idea that training alongside humans would somehow be fatal seemed absurd. As the laughter continued, Maya remained perfectly still. She did not smile. She did not attempt to clarify. She simply waited. Gradually the amusement began to fade. One by one, students noticed something unsettling. The human officer was not joking. The instructor's smile disappeared first. A strange tension settled across the auditorium. "What exactly does that mean?" someone asked. Maya's gaze shifted toward the speaker. "It means exactly what I said." The room became quiet again. Not because anyone believed her completely. Because for the first time, uncertainty had replaced amusement. The instructor studied her carefully before ending the discussion and moving to another topic. Yet concentration never fully returned to the seminar. Conversation spread afterward throughout the academy faster than any official announcement. Humanity had finally provided an answer. The problem was that nobody knew whether it was a warning, a threat, or the truth. 3 days later, Academy Command issued a decision. If the mystery had become this disruptive, it would be resolved permanently. For the first time in Academy history, non-human observers would be granted access to a human training exercise. When informed of the decision, Maya offered no objections. She simply nodded. Then, after a brief pause, she delivered a final statement that would echo through the academy long before the observation day arrived. "You wanted answers," she said quietly. "Just don't expect to enjoy them." Observation day arrived with the kind of anticipation usually reserved for championship simulations or diplomatic summits. Cadets from dozens of species gathered outside the restricted human sector long before their assigned entry times. Many expected to witness advanced technology. Others hoped to expose whatever secret humanity had hidden for so long. The first surprise appeared before anyone entered the facility. Medical teams were already stationed outside. Not one or two emergency personnel. Entire response units. Trauma specialists. Evacuation crews. Mobile treatment chambers. Several observers exchanged confused looks. No training event at the academy required this level of preparation. The second surprise was the structure itself. The human complex looked less like a school facility and more like a military fortress. Reinforced bulkheads lined every corridor. Emergency blast doors waited at regular intervals. Warning indicators covered the walls. Massive containment systems surrounded areas that appeared dedicated solely to training. One alien officer finally asked the obvious question. Why would a training center need all this protection? Maya answered without hesitation. To keep the training inside. The response generated nervous laughter. Nobody found it funny. The observers were escorted to a protected viewing gallery overlooking an enormous chamber below. Transparent armored barriers separated them from the exercise area. Sensor displays immediately activated, broadcasting environmental data. At first, the chamber seemed empty. Then the simulation began. Gravity increased. Several observers checked their displays, assuming a malfunction. The readings continued climbing. 1.5 times standard. 2 times standard. 3 times standard. A few species were already experiencing discomfort despite standing safely behind protective shielding. Then the temperature rose. What began as a comfortable environment rapidly transformed into conditions resembling an industrial furnace. Heat waves distorted the air. Warning symbols flashed across monitoring screens. Simultaneously, atmospheric pressure fluctuated while chemical compounds were introduced into the chamber. An instructor standing beside the observers calmly reviewed the numbers. Current conditions would be considered unsurvivable for most academy species. The room fell silent. "Is this the exercise?" someone asked. "No," the instructor replied. "This is preparation." Several cadets thought they had misunderstood the translation software. Preparation. Before anyone could ask another question, armored doors opened. Human trainees entered. 20 recruits walked into the chamber carrying heavy equipment packs. None wore powered armor. None used environmental protection suits. Standard training uniforms were their only gear. The observers expected hesitation. There was none. The humans immediately began running. Not jogging. Not cautiously advancing. Running. They crossed obstacle fields while gravity remained high enough to cripple most species. They climbed walls, vaulted barriers, and maneuvered through terrain designed to exhaust them. As temperatures continued rising, instructors added additional complications. Explosive charges detonated. Shockwaves rolled through the chamber. Visibility dropped. Communication interference activated. The recruits never slowed. Observers watched in disbelief as heart rates elevated, muscles strained, and sweat poured from every trainee. Yet nobody stopped moving. Then the exercise became stranger. Tactical problems began appearing on displays throughout the chamber. Navigation puzzles. Resource allocation decisions. Combat calculations. Emergency response scenarios. The recruits solved them while running. One observer stared at the monitor in confusion. They're taking examinations. A human instructor nodded. Multitasking assessment. They are already inside a death zone. Correct. The observer looked horrified. The exercise continued escalating. Equipment packs suddenly increased weight through internal resistance systems. New obstacles emerged from the floor. Simulated injuries were assigned randomly to trainees, forcing them to alter movement patterns while maintaining team coordination. Failure brought immediate penalties. Extra weight. Reduced visibility. Additional objectives. The humans adapted every time. Not perfectly. Mistakes occurred. When they did, instructors punished errors by making conditions worse. Nobody complained. Nobody argued. They simply adjusted and kept moving. Several non-human observers began feeling physically uncomfortable despite remaining in complete safety. Some required medical attention after prolonged exposure to the chamber's visual and sensory intensity. Others struggled to understand why anyone would willingly endure such treatment. After nearly an hour, the exercise finally ended. The recruits exited the chamber exhausted, breathing heavily, uniforms soaked with sweat. For the first time, observers saw clear signs of strain. Relief spread through the viewing gallery. At least the humans had limits. Then one academy commander spoke. Impressive. When does the actual training begin? The human instructors exchanged brief glances. A few trainees laughed. Not arrogantly. More like people hearing an innocent misunderstanding. Finally, Maya looked toward the observers. That was physical conditioning. For several seconds, nobody responded. The commander blinked. What do you mean physical conditioning? It develops baseline endurance, Maya said. The actual training starts after recovery. The gallery became completely silent. Across the chamber below, maintenance crews were already resetting the environment for the next phase. And judging by the warning indicators appearing on every monitor, what came next would be far worse than anything they had just witnessed. News of the observation spread across the academy faster than any official report. Within days, recordings of the human conditioning exercise became the most discussed topic in every department. Cadets replayed footage repeatedly, searching for evidence that the entire event had been exaggerated. Many refused to accept what they had witnessed. Some argued the gravity readings had been altered. Others claimed the environmental data was fabricated for psychological effect. A few insisted humans must have been using hidden biological enhancements. The alternative, that ordinary human recruits truly considered such conditions normal, seemed too absurd to believe. The debate became so intense that Academy leadership authorized a historical briefing to provide context. If the galaxy wanted answers, it would receive them. The presentation took place in one of the largest lecture chambers on the station. Attendance exceeded capacity. Hundreds of cadets filled seats while thousands more connected remotely. The briefing began with a simple image. Earth. Humanity's homeworld rotated slowly above the central display. At first glance, it looked beautiful. Blue oceans. White clouds. Green continents. Then the statistics appeared. Predator density. Pathogenic diversity. Seismic activity. Atmospheric instability. Climate variation. Natural disaster frequency. One category after another illuminated the screen. The room gradually fell silent. By Academy standards, Earth was insane. Entire regions experienced temperatures capable of killing exposed individuals. Other areas froze so completely that survival required constant preparation. Massive storms crossed oceans with enough power to erase cities. Earthquakes reshaped landscapes. Volcanoes erupted without warning. Diseases evolved continuously. One instructor summarized it simply. Most civilizations evolved on worlds that became safer over time. Humanity evolved on a planet that never stopped trying to kill them. The next series of records revealed something even more surprising. Humans had not merely survived these conditions. They had adapted to them. Every challenge became a problem to solve. Extreme cold led to innovation. Extreme heat produced adaptation. Dangerous wildlife encouraged cooperation. Resource scarcity created resilience. Generation after generation faced obstacles that should have limited their growth. Instead, each obstacle became a lesson. The presentation moved through centuries of human history. Exploration. Conflict. Scientific advancement. Recovery. Again and again, humanity encountered situations that appeared catastrophic. Again and again, they found ways forward. Not because they were physically superior to every species. Not because they possessed extraordinary intelligence. Because they refused to quit. That trait appeared everywhere in the historical record. When conditions became difficult, humans adjusted. When plans failed, they created new ones. When survival seemed uncertain, they continued anyway. The briefing then shifted toward humanity's entrance into the wider galaxy. At first, many civilizations welcomed the newcomers. Humans proved adaptable allies. Their creativity solved logistical problems that frustrated more advanced species. Their military units performed exceptionally well during joint operations. For a time, cooperation seemed straightforward. Then the first major interstellar conflict erupted. A hostile coalition attacked frontier systems across multiple sectors. Alliance forces mobilized rapidly. Human units fought alongside numerous species throughout the campaign. Initial reports praised the partnership. Later reports told a different story. Combat environments changed rapidly. Supply lines collapsed. Communication networks failed. Unexpected threats emerged constantly. Human formations adapted quickly. Many allied units could not. The problem was not courage. The problem was conditioning. Human soldiers had spent years training inside unpredictable situations. Chaos was familiar to them. They expected plans to fail. They expected circumstances to deteriorate. Other species trained for efficiency. Humans trained for disaster. As casualties increased, alliance commanders attempted to standardize preparation programs. Joint training exercises became mandatory across multiple sectors. The results were disastrous. Several species suffered severe injuries during exercises designed by human instructors. Environmental stress thresholds proved incompatible. Endurance expectations exceeded safe limits. Emergency scenarios intended as educational became medical incidents. One archive recording showed a human commander arguing against the policy. "We are preparing them for what we face. A senior official replied, then reduced the intensity. The commander's answer appeared in every subsequent report. If we reduce the intensity, it stops preparing them for what we face. Eventually the alliance reached an unavoidable conclusion. Human training methods worked. That was never the problem. The problem was that most non-human bodies and minds were not designed to endure them. Joint programs were quietly discontinued. Separate standards were established. Humanity accepted the decision immediately. Not because they considered themselves superior. Because they understood the risk. The final document appeared on the screen. A policy statement issued decades earlier. Human military training would remain isolated to prevent unnecessary casualties among Allied personnel. The auditorium remained silent as the briefing ended. For the first time, the Academy understood that humanity's secrecy had never been about hiding strength. It had been about protecting everyone else from the process required to create it. And according to the records, the observers had not yet seen the most demanding part of that process. 2 days after the historical briefing, Academy Command approved access to what human instructors described as an advanced operational exercise. The announcement immediately attracted attention across the station. Most observers expected another demonstration of physical endurance. Some anticipated a large-scale combat simulation. Nobody expected what they were about to witness. The exercise began inside a massive command environment covering several interconnected training zones. Thousands of sensors monitored every movement. Tactical displays surrounded the observation gallery. Human trainees entered their assigned positions while instructors monitored from separate control centers. A message appeared across every screen. Controlled catastrophe initiated. Within seconds, the scenario unfolded. An enemy fleet emerged from simulated hyperspace and launched attacks against multiple population centers. Communication satellites were destroyed. Orbital defenses collapsed. Civilian transportation networks failed. Emergency broadcasts flooded every channel simultaneously. Before observers could process those developments, new alerts appeared. Power grid failures. Mass evacuations. Infrastructure damage. Resource shortages. Medical emergencies. The number of active crises multiplied continuously. One Academy strategist stared at the displays in disbelief. Most military simulations focused on a single primary objective. This simulation generated dozens. Then hundreds. Every problem demanded immediate attention. Human teams received fragmented information streams while new disasters appeared faster than existing ones could be solved. Entire sectors disappeared from communication networks. Rescue operations became trapped inside combat zones. Critical facilities suffered structural failures. The observers struggled to follow events. The humans did not. Without waiting for instructions, units divided responsibilities. Some focused on evacuation corridors. Others restored communications. Specialized teams secured damaged infrastructure while mobile groups responded to emerging threats. The most surprising part was the speed. There was no visible confusion. No lengthy planning sessions. No hesitation. Every participant seemed prepared for circumstances that should have overwhelmed them. The simulation intensified. Enemy tactics changed unexpectedly. Supply routes vanished. Command centers were destroyed. Leadership positions were eliminated from the scenario without warning. Several observers expected operational collapse. Instead, human units adapted almost instantly. Replacement leaders emerged automatically. Teams reorganized themselves. Objectives shifted. New plans formed within moments. One instructor monitoring the gallery noticed the growing confusion among non-human cadets. This isn't unusual for them. A student looked away from the display. How could this possibly be normal? The instructor pointed toward the ongoing simulation. Because reality doesn't care about plans. As the exercise continued, observers began noticing another pattern. Human trainees rarely depended on perfect information. Most academy doctrines emphasized collecting data before making decisions. Humans often acted with incomplete knowledge. They assessed available facts, chose a course of action, and adjusted when new information arrived. The strategy looked reckless. Yet it worked. Every minute gained through decisive action prevented larger disasters later. Then the exercise revealed its cruelest element. A classified layer of the simulation became visible to observers. The instructors themselves were sabotaging the trainees. Communication errors were being introduced intentionally. False intelligence reports were distributed. Navigation systems provided incorrect coordinates. Some units received contradictory orders. Others were given incomplete mission details. The academy commander watching the exercise leaned forward. "Your instructors are interfering." "Correct," Maya replied. "Why?" "Because enemies do." The commander stared at her. "No, I mean why train that way?" Maya never looked away from the displays. "Because eventually someone will lie to you. Equipment will fail. Information will be wrong. If training assumes perfection, then training becomes fiction." The sabotage continued. Despite constant interference, the human teams maintained momentum. Mistakes occurred, but recovery happened quickly. Individuals were conditioned to recognize failure without becoming trapped by it. Hours passed. The observers grew mentally exhausted simply trying to follow events. The trainees remained focused. Eventually the simulation reached its final phase. A coordinated attack struck every remaining objective simultaneously. Civilian sectors faced imminent destruction. Military resources were stretched beyond theoretical limits. Multiple crises converged into a single overwhelming catastrophe. Many academy analysts predicted total failure. The humans stabilized the situation anyway. Not through superior firepower. Not through advanced technology. Through adaptation. Every participant accepted uncertainty as part of the environment rather than an obstacle to it. When the exercise finally ended, silence filled the observation gallery. For the first time, nobody questioned the value of human training. Nobody laughed at Maya's warning. Nobody assumed humanity was exaggerating. Because the observers had discovered something unsettling. Human training was not designed to create soldiers who functioned under ideal conditions. It was designed to create people who continued functioning after ideal conditions had completely disappeared. And before anyone could fully absorb that realization, reality itself was about to provide the academy with a demonstration no simulation could match. The advanced exercise ended, but discussions about it continued throughout the academy. Analysts reviewed recordings. Instructors debated human doctrine. Cadets tried to understand how anyone could operate effectively inside such relentless chaos. Then, less than 12 hours later, the academy suffered a real emergency. It began with a reactor malfunction deep within one of the station's primary power distribution sectors. At first, the problem appeared minor. Then containment systems failed. Automatic safeguards shut down. Power fluctuations spread through connected infrastructure. Within minutes, entire sections of the station lost electricity. Emergency lighting activated across multiple levels. Communication networks became unstable. Transit systems stopped functioning. Security doors locked unexpectedly. Sensor coverage disappeared from critical areas. Confusion spread faster than the failure itself. Many cadets initially assumed another training scenario had begun. The timing seemed too perfect. Human exercises had dominated academy operations for days. Then the first injury reports arrived. This was not a simulation. Panic followed. Instructors attempted to establish centralized control, but communication outages prevented coordination. Emergency channels became overloaded. Contradictory information flooded command systems. Some departments ordered evacuations while others instructed personnel to remain in place. The academy had spent years teaching strategy. Very few people had experienced genuine chaos. The difference became obvious immediately. Crowds formed in corridors. Students searched for guidance. Officers waited for instructions that never arrived. Entire sections of the station effectively froze. Meanwhile, the human trainees reacted within seconds. Not because they possessed privileged information. Not because they received special orders. They simply recognized the situation. For them, it looked familiar. Communication failure. Infrastructure damage. Unclear intelligence. Potential casualties. It resembled every nightmare scenario they had practiced repeatedly. Human teams immediately organized themselves. Medical trainees moved toward reported injury zones. Engineering specialists headed for damaged systems. Security personnel established evacuation routes. Nobody waited for permission. They acted because delay would make everything worse. Observers who had watched the training exercises suddenly realized something unsettling. The humans were responding exactly as they had during simulations. The same speed. The same decisiveness. The same adaptability. Only now the consequences were real. As conditions deteriorated, human teams moved deeper into affected sectors. Several corridors contained hazardous radiation levels from damaged equipment. Others suffered structural instability caused by secondary failures. The risks did not stop them. Groups communicated through improvised networks when standard channels failed. Portable equipment replaced disabled systems. Human trainees coordinated with local staff and began restoring order one section at a time. Medical stations appeared throughout the academy. Injured personnel received treatment. Evacuation routes became organized. Critical infrastructure was stabilized. Most remarkably, the humans achieved this while information remained incomplete. They did not possess a perfect picture of the emergency. They never expected one. Hours earlier, academy observers had questioned why humans trained under impossible conditions. Now they were watching the answer. Human training was not about endurance alone. It was not about strength. It was not even about combat. It was about remaining functional when circumstances became overwhelming. Other species often trained until success became predictable. Humans trained until failure became survivable. That difference changed everything. Eventually reactor specialists regained partial control of the damaged systems. Power returned to major sectors. Communication networks stabilized. Emergency alerts gradually disappeared. The crisis ended before it became a catastrophe. Not because the academy's safeguards had performed perfectly. Many of them had failed. The disaster was contained because enough people were capable of functioning after those safeguards failed. And nearly all of those people were human. When the situation finally stabilized, academy leadership gathered to review the response. Casualty projections demonstrated a sobering reality. Without the immediate actions taken by human trainees, injuries would have been significantly higher and several critical systems might have suffered irreversible damage. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then an academy commander turned toward Maya. After everything they had witnessed, there was only one question left. Why train this hard? Maya looked around the room. The confusion was gone. The skepticism was gone. Everyone finally understood enough to ask the right question. Her answer was simple. Because someday the worst day you can imagine stops being imaginary. Silence followed. Not uncomfortable silence. Understanding. In the months that followed, academy policy officially changed. Human training facilities remained isolated. Observation programs became heavily restricted once again. This time, nobody complained. The mystery had been solved. Humanity did not train alone because they were arrogant. They did not train alone because they wanted secrets. They trained alone because the process that created human resilience was too dangerous for most species to endure. And when disaster arrived without warning, the galaxy finally understood why humans accepted that burden. They suffered through the impossible during training so everyone else would have a chance to survive reality when it arrived.